Theo and I are here with bold predictions in the NFL playoffs, the Super Bowl that's coming soon. Stay tuned for that. But mostly the 2025 season. That's where our heads are already at. Yes, the playoffs are great, but we're already thinking about 2025, best ball 2025, fantasy football. So, Theo, kick us off. Give us a bold prediction.
The bold prediction, Matt, the last 4 seasons, the wide receiver 1 overall has led the league in targets and led the league in receptions. We have another player coming up this year that's going to potentially break records in both categories, and that's Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is going to set an NFL record in receptions. He's going to pass Michael Thomas, and he is going to become the 4th player in NFL history to post a 200 target season. And this has been a true takeover for Nacua when it comes to the hierarchy in the Rams wide receiver room. This is a player who's averaged 17.6 points per game as a rookie and averaged even better this year, Matt. The whole one-year wonder thing is completely out the window. Averaged 18.8 points per game, including a game he got kicked out of for fighting, where he played very minimal snaps, and another game where he got banged up. So this is a player that is a target vacuum and is going to have an all-time type season next year. We've seen what a wide receiver 1 overall can do in the Sean McVay offense. We saw that with Cooper Kupp years ago. This year, Puka Nacua is going to be right there at the end, going to catch so many passes. This is going to be a great player for you to draft in the middle of the first round next year.
And the Rams are thriving right now against all odds. With all the late round draft picks, this team decided they were going to go all in a couple of years ago and trade all their picks and bring in all these veterans, and all these guys are gone. And yet they've patched together a team that's 10-7 that's now back in the playoffs. So you could think about, okay, what does that mean for next year? They'll be even better next year as a team. There's a lot of tailwinds helping propel Puka Nacua into 2025. It's exciting. I have a wide receiver that it's going to be my must-draft wide receiver in fantasy football. He's not quite Puka Nacua, but if you can imagine like a smaller, discounted version of Puka Nacua, that is Josh Downs. Now, Josh Downs will catch 100 passes in 2025. He will finish top 5 in the NFL in receptions in 2025. And that is because he is explosive. He is agile. Just look at his athleticism metrics on playerprofiler.com. He is one of a handful of college players to ever catch 100-plus passes before the age of 20. There's been like a couple ever, okay? The Colts defense is a laughingstock. Anthony Richardson is a ticking time bomb. Will he even be healthy next year at all? We have no idea. So we're probably going to get more of a pocket passer in Indianapolis than we will get of Anthony Richardson in 2025. This all propels Josh Downs next year. He averaged 7+ receptions per game when Joe Flacco took the majority of the snaps last year. So all systems go for Josh Downs next year.
Yeah, I love Josh Downs. I think this is a really good call. He'll be a player entering year 3. And Matt, when it comes to Josh Downs, he was the only wide receiver in Indianapolis to have production alongside Richardson. He had a couple of big games alongside Richardson as well. So even if it's not the pocket passer, I think he'll still find ways to thrive because this is a very, very good football player. I'm going to stay at the wide receiver spot, Matt. It's Malik Nabers. And this is a guy that we were extremely high on all last offseason. If you listen to Matt and I on our shows, we both talked about Malik Nabers being a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And he turned out to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And Matt, the usage was just insane with Malik Nabers. I mean, few players have this sort of target share, this sort of air yard share combined as a first-year player. And this is a guy with immense talent. He's only 21 years old. This is a guy that can be one of the best target earners we've ever seen in the league. And my prediction is next year, Malik Nabers is going to set the NFL record for the most catches by a player in their first 2 seasons in the league. Puka would have gotten it this year had he not missed games. this is a very obtainable record for Nabers. It's 196, Matt. So I think this is one where I would actually be surprised if Nabers doesn't catch this 2-year record. Nabers this year, in only 15 games played, had 109 receptions, which broke Nacua's record for the most ever by a rookie wide receiver, only exceeded by Brock Bowers, who was just exceptional. But Nabers had 109 receptions in 15 games played. He broke the New York Giants single season record as well. And Matt, I'll say that some point in the next 2 years, Nabers is going to get Odell Beckham's touchdown record for a season, which is 14, and he's going to get Victor Cruz's receiving yardage record, which is somewhere in the 1500s. All of these records are going to get broken by Malik Nabers in New York. He's a special player.
We have a theme. Which is you pick a massive superstar first-round pick in fantasy type player, and then I pick like the discount version of that guy that you can get many rounds later, but also has some excitement building for him in 2025. So if I had to pick the discount version of Malik Nabers, heavily discounted, it's Ricky Pearsall. Oh, yes. Ricky Pearsall is Malik Nabers' equal in the athleticism department. Again, go to playerprofiler.com. Look at the 40 time, the speed score, the burst score, the agility score. He is one of the best athletes from this 2024 wide receiver class, which is looking like one of the better wide receiver classes in recent memory. Think about the situation that we have unfolding in San Francisco. The team's talent base is aging out of the league. The defense is collapsing. Deebo Samuel is dust, and he essentially signed a 3-year contract, which is up. There's some dead cap left, but there's no way San Francisco decides to pay him $15 million this year. Brandon Ayuk is coming back from a knee injury. Everything is aligning. The moon, the stars, everything is aligning for Ricky Pearsall to make a big, big, big leap next year as San Francisco shifts over into more of a high-octane offense to make up for their deficiencies on defense. And then due to target conservation, he's going to be what's left, and he's going to be that explosive playmaker. You're going to see a lot of plays being made in training camp and in preseason, and the buzz will build. I think his ADP will rise more than any other wide receiver in the month of August.
I love that. And he's such an athlete that you just know how this goes, Matt. There'll be a highlight in a preseason game. There'll be a highlight from practice of Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall, if anybody hasn't seen this one, probably has the best college catch of all time in a game against UNC Charlotte. It was an absolutely ridiculous feat of athleticism. Pop that one in the tape. If you think I sound crazy, once you watch this one, you're not going to disagree with me. So I'm with you. I love Pearsall. This was a special class. We talked about this last year, Matt, and all of our Dynasty tools at Player Profiler can help you identify players like this. But soon on Player Profiler, about next week, will be my 2025 rookie rankings. That's going to be a free article. Definitely come and check that one out. But Matt, Ricky Pearsall broke out at the Senior Bowl, and we'll also have a presence down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. I really think that this is one where you want to listen to Matt Pearsall. Buy him low in Dynasty as well, Matt. You agree on that?
Yes. This is the buy low receiver. He has the most upside of any of these second-year receivers. He has the most upside in terms of differential, where he is now in terms of Dynasty value, where he could be 9 months from now.
And another wide receiver that I think is going to gain Dynasty value all offseason long, just when people start looking at his season as a whole, is T. Higgins. T. Higgins averaged 18.5 points per game. This was the best he has ever performed as a pro. And Matt, when we're talking about T. Higgins, we're talking about a guy who's still only 25 years old, came in the league very young, but we've been waiting for a season like this where T really delivers. And he gives us 18.5 points per game, has 10 touchdown catches, which was tied for 5th highest in the league. And Matt, he also was extremely high up there in red zone targets for a guy who really played a partial season, had 24 red zone targets, caught 14 of them. T. Higgins is going to command, we talked about this on Sonic Truth this year together, about how T. Higgins is going to command a massive contract on the open market. And I think that Cincinnati's going to do everything they can to keep the band together, but at the end of the day, it's just not going to be enough. This is going to be the season where T. Higgins moves on, and T. Higgins is going to sign with the Carolina Panthers. This is going to be a team very much on the rise in year 2. Dave Canales is a guy that is very much the quarterback whisperer. Did it with Baker Mayfield, did it with Geno Smith. Maybe Matt, he does it with another quarterback next year. But Dave Canales, Chuba Hubbard this year, this team improved the offensive line. They had a lot of production out of Adam Thielen at times down the stretch, but they need an alpha wide receiver badly. T. Higgins is going to sign with Carolina, team up with Chuba Hubbard in what becomes a very efficient offense, and they're going to challenge for the NFC South title next year.
Oh, yes. And it's almost like we've coordinated some of these takes because I'm very interested in Bryce Young. I was out on Bryce Young as a rookie. I was not interested. I thought he would be a bust, and he was. But sometimes busts turn things around. Sometimes it takes a couple of years. Jared Goff took many years. Baker Mayfield turned 30, and then suddenly he's putting up 25 fantasy points a game. Other quarterbacks takes about 2 years, like, Josh Allen. Now, is Bryce Young Josh Allen? No. But he looks like a mobile Drew Brees. That's what he looks like. He's putting up 250 rushing yards per season. So, again, already 500 rushing yards in the NFL for Bryce Young, and he hasn't played a full season yet. He is a deep ball passer. Look at Player Profiler. Air yards per attempt, 8.8, number 6 in the NFL. And his deep ball catchable pass rate, 51%, number 5 in the NFL. So he throws a very catchable deep ball. If he gets more talent in that wide receiver core that can get open underneath, beyond just Adam Thielen, you see what happens. As soon as someone can get some separation and squeeze the football, suddenly Bryce Young looks a lot better. He looks a lot more competent. Bryce Young outproduced C.J. Stroud last year. He's going to outproduce C.J. Stroud again. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league, propelled by weapons like T. Higgins and the overall growth and development of this offense. Still, the defense not ready to be like a super playoff caliber defense. So they're going to have to win games with their offense, and it's going to be all about Bryce Young making plays all over the field with his legs, with his arm. Top 10.
I love it. I'm ready to take an L on Bryce Young. I'm not ready to take it right now, Matt, because I want to see it for a full season. But I was burying him as a rookie. CJ Stroud, I was victory lapping. Some guys just don't develop right away. And credit
He's
to the
23 years old.
Yeah,
Theo?
Carolina coaching staff gets it, and I think Bryce Young took that next step. I think that continues. I love your take, Matt.
I love being right every step of the way. I love avoiding a player when his value craters and then seeing that low point and being like, okay, there's potential here. I don't hate players. I hate ADPs. And when he was overrated, we were staying away from him. When he's underrated, like he was this year, and he still is, now we're buying.
Absolutely. And one quarterback who you're not going to be able to buy in your dynasty leagues right now, unless you want to use the top 3 pick in a dynasty startup, is Jayden Daniels. Another player we got very, very right at Player Profiler. We had him ahead of consensus in the quarterback rankings for a long time because we saw what was coming. And Jayden Daniels, as good as he was, I mean, he exceeded our expectations. This is a guy who was just fantastic. He was second among all quarterbacks in rushing yardage, which is something that we anticipated. But the passing, Matt, was sensational. He had a 69% completion percentage. He finished 5th among all quarterbacks in quarterback points per game. And all of the metrics, when you look at him as a passer, Matt, he was number 3 overall in quarterback rating, completion percentage versus zone. He was 1st overall. Passer rating versus zone, he was 4th overall. Like, there's no defense you can throw at this guy, and he's not able to cut it up. And, Matt, I think the weapons are going to improve next year. Last year, they drafted Ben Sinnott. They signed Austin Eckler. They made a couple of small moves, but it was really, and Zach Ertz, obviously. Terry McLaurin still was by far his most reliable receiver. I think Washington, through the draft, and through free agency will continue to surround Jayden Daniels with weapons. This is a franchise who understands what they have. It'll also be year 2 of Cliff Kingsbury running the offense, year 2 of Dan Quinn as the head coach. There's just everything is going to tighten up. Washington is going to be even better as a team next year. And I think they're going to take a massive step forward. Jayden Daniels is going to be the MVP of the NFL next year. This is a player that I think when we come out and we do our early rankings in the draft kit at the quarterback spot, Daniels will be somewhere around quarterback 5. But I think he has potential to finish as the QB1 overall next year in fantasy. And I think Washington's going to win a ton of games. Lamar Jackson finished as the MVP in year 2. Patrick Mahomes finished as the MVP in year 2. Jayden Daniels is going to finish as the MVP in year 2. This is going to continue being a trend. Daniels in fantasy, Daniels in real life football. Both, any way you cut it, Jayden Daniels is a guy that is going to put up a massive season.
Wow, I love it. And we're gonna stick to quarterback. I'm not done with quarterback yet. There's another super underrated quarterback right now, and he's been underrated his whole career. The beauty is he's been underestimated going all the way back to high school, right? And that's Brock Purdy. All Brock Purdy does is win. All Brock Purdy does is put up fantasy points. Brock Purdy was top 3 in pressured completion percentage and top 10 in deep ball completion percentage last year. He has one job, which is to push the ball downfield and put it in a place where receivers can catch it. And then when no one's available, he can run. He ran for over 300 yards last year and 5 rushing touchdowns. And we have an explosive play metric on playerprofiler.com, EPX. He had the #1 passing explosive plays. So when you look at all the plays that were impactful through the air, Brock Purdy had the highest rate of delivering those types of plays, and yet he is not viewed as a super valuable fantasy option because he stays healthy. He was QB 14, but on a points per game basis, he was QB 10, right? He was QB 10, 18.6 fantasy points per game, but that was down from last year, 19.2 fantasy points per game. He was number 6 the previous year when his weapons were healthier in fantasy points per game. But back in 2023, the San Francisco defense was smothering. As this defense ages, as we've talked about, not only is it going to help Ricky Pearsall step up and become an alpha receiver in the NFL, Brock Purdy is going to have to be the reason this team wins games. He is going to put the offense on his back. He is going to be the Joe Burrow of 2025 and have a top 5 fantasy season.
Yeah, I mean, you got me excited about Purdy, but I think it's actually very well thought out as well. Sort of everything went poorly for Purdy, and he was still able to perform.
Yeah.
Next year could be the really big one for him. So I love that one. One class that we've talked about for a long time at Player Profiler, Sonic Truth, the two of us talked about how transformative the 2023 running back class was going to be for fantasy. This is the year you want to get access to some of these guys. And we were absolutely right on that. This past year, you had a glimpse of what it could be. Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane all finished as top 6 scorers at the running back position in points per game. It was still the story of the year with Saquon Barkley, and deservedly so. Barkley was fantastic, but Gibbs came very close to him at the end. Bijan right behind those guys. Next, and Devon Achane led all running backs in catches, in receiving yardage, in touchdown catches, and still was an efficient running back on the ground. So when it comes down to it, this 2023 class next year, it's really going to be the story of the season. All 3 of these guys are going to finish 1, 2, and 3 in the running back scoring. All 3 of these guys are worthy of a top 5 pick in your early drafts, your early best ball drafts. Jahmyr Gibbs, unbelievable player. Bijan Robinson is what we thought he was going to be. And Devon Achane keeps doing things that we couldn't have even imagined. If you told me 2 years ago that Devon Achane was leading the NFL in receptions in year 2, as high as I was on Achane, I still wouldn't have believed that. I think next year Achane could have 90-plus catches as well. I think we saw sort of the tip of the iceberg of what he is as a receiver. When in doubt next year, draft a year 3 running back. Gibbs, Robinson, HN. There's no wrong answer.
Also, Jalen Wright disappointed. If Jalen Wright stepped up and delivered more explosive plays, we could say, okay, there's going to be more of a Raheem Mostert presence, a young Raheem Mostert presence to compete for touches with HN. But Jalen Wright disappointed when given opportunities, did not seize a bigger role. So all systems go for HN. However, in 2025, you are going to wish that you implemented zero RB, because 2024 has been all about the year of running back durability. However, it's a moment in time, right? It was pure variance that all these early round running backs stayed healthy. And history tells us that running backs are the most fragile of all the positions. And they're also the hardest to project. Year in, year out, running back production can wax and wane depending on the situation, depending on the offense, depending on the quality of the defense, the offensive line. They're very dependent on the supporting cast as well. There's a handful of running backs you could consider handcuffs that are going to rise up and seize jobs and outproduce the current incumbent. And you shouldn't be surprised, because this is the norm. 2024 was very much the exception. So next year, you're going to see Trey Benson come out of nowhere. Trey Benson is a quality player. Trey Benson just didn't have the opportunity and didn't have the sample size to really show what he could do in the efficiency metrics on playerprofiler.com. But he is super explosive. He can catch passes. And James Conner is going to be 30 years old with close to 1,300 carries on his odometer. That's the prime candidate for a 2024 rookie to come up as a sophomore and take over a backfield. Even though James Conner signed that big contract, that's going to depress the Trey Benson ADP. That's going to be a buying opportunity. Zach Charbonnet outproducing Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, his groin is made of paper mache at this point. The injury track record has really been building up with Kenneth Walker. And Zach Charbonnet, all he does is produce. He has athleticism across the board, size, soft hands. There's really no reason why the team should not turn to Zach Charbonnet. And even if they don't, you're likely going to look at multiple Kenneth Walker injuries next year. And Zach Charbonnet outproduces Kenneth Walker. Braylon Allen, watch him outproduce Breece Hall. There's a reason why coaches like Braylon Allen. And there's also a reason why coaches don't love Breece Hall. Now we have new coaches in New York. They could easily prefer Braylon Allen. There's no investment in Breece Hall in New York, and there's not big production on the Breece Hall resume that gives him the security of a primary back role. Watch Braylon Allen seize that job in New York. And finally, we had Kyren Williams absorbing a huge workload at 200 pounds. This is not sustainable. They are actively trying to drive Kyren Williams into the ground. It's going to continue into the playoffs, especially if they win this week. Then you're looking at another couple games of Kyren Williams getting 25 plus touches. He will have to pay the price for that in 2025. An injury is destined for Kyren Williams, probably early in the year. Blake Corum's out. It's just a forearm injury. He's a very similar player to Kyren Williams, just a little bigger, a little more explosive. He'll have another year of seasoning. Next year, Blake Corum outproduces Kyren Williams. So we have a bunch of handcuff running backs rising up and seizing jobs and outproducing incumbents next year, propelling zero RB as the league-winning strategy.
Revenge of the wide receiver and handcuff running back season. I love it, Matt. Very bold. We got to give the people. We're gonna come back with another bold predictions episode after the playoffs. You can catch Matt and I though on the Sonic Truth podcast. We're gonna be back soon, Matt. We're gonna do one this week, and we're gonna be dropping these fairly regularly. So you'll see Matt and I together right here on this channel, right here on this podcast. Matt, you got to give the people your Super Bowl prediction though. People need it.
Yes, we need to talk about the Super Bowl, the playoffs. Fast Draft has a playoff Super Slam, $10 entry. You can select up to 8 teams. There's no draft. You just select any 6 players in the NFL playoffs through the Super Bowl. You put them on boosters and you see what happens. I think currently we're recording this on Friday. It's about 75% filled. So if you're listening to this on Saturday afternoon, make sure you jump in there. Now, a player that I would be drafting if I could in this playoff super slam would be Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey is already one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And from the 2024 class, he is the second best of them all, right? He's already surpassed Marvin Harrison. He's already surpassed Rome Odunze. He's the guy behind Malik Nabers. He's going to be a top 5 wide receiver next year. And the Chargers, with Ladd McConkey, and just an all-around super talented roster that is peaking at just the right time, it's going to be the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh getting further in the playoffs than brother John Harbaugh, not only further than the Ravens, all the way to the Super Bowl. San Diego, Los Angeles, Superchargers.
I'm going to go with a all Rust Belt Bowl. So I like your Chargers, Matt. It's going to be the Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions. The story with the Bills is going to be they are going to beat the Broncos this week. They're going to beat the Ravens next week. So he's going to beat one Harbaugh brother. And your Chargers are going to upset the Chiefs. So you will get the Chargers against the Buffalo Bills. It will be Harbaugh. Buffalo Bills end up going to the Super Bowl. Detroit rolls through the NFC. Detroit faces off against the Bills, and Josh Allen will be the difference. Buffalo gets a Super Bowl win. Oh, sorry about that one, Matt.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.